Jai Hind listeners, this is Brigadier YVR Vijay here. As part of our MRO Digest series with experts on various fields, today we have General NB Singh with us. Lieutenant General NB Singh served as Director General of the Corps of Electronics and Mechanical Engineering. He was the DGEME. And he was also the Director General of the Information Systems, DGIS. He was a founding member of the Armed Forces Tribunal at Jabalpur. General NB Singh specializes in armored fighting vehicles, and he has played a key role in the design and development of bulletproof vehicle Takshak, the Arjun Armored Recovery vehicle, and he has made significant contributions in the development of the Dhanush gun system. He has undergone specialized training in Germany on off-highway vehicles. He has also served in Moscow as the Military Attaché Technical. General NB Singh is a PhD in knowledge leadership. So we welcome General NB Singh, sir.
Thank you, Vijay. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind, sir. Today, our topic is military technology cooperation between friendly nations. Defense cooperation is an ideal tool to advance the national foreign policy. By building bridges of friendship, preventing conflicts, building mutual trust and capacities on a global basis. The significance of defense cooperation in India's overall diplomacy cannot be overstated. Currently, India has defense cooperation agreements with over 53 countries. So, General NB, sir, what is the strategic significance of military technology cooperation between friendly nations? And why do nations make this an essential element of military diplomacy?
Well, Vijay, military technical cooperation, or to be precise, technological cooperation between nations and kingdoms has been an ongoing phenomenon from ancient times. Now, if you take the last 1,000 years, ever since the advent of gunpowder by the Chinese, and it spread into Europe and the Indian subcontinent, you have seen how the nature of warfare has changed. Subsequently, during Second World War, you find that the Allies, shared their technologies in fields like radar, crypto, aviation systems, and that led to the defeat of Germany. It was one of the factors. During the Cold War, it was the combined technological dominance of the Western powers that broke the back of Soviet Union and led to its disintegration. Going back to ancient times, I found a very interesting reference made by our Honorable Foreign Minister, Shri Jaishankar, in one of his talks on the Mahabharata. He likened the presence of Lord Krishna on the side of the Pandavas as the presence of high-tech vis-a-vis the presence of his entire army, his infantrymen, his horsemen, and his chariots and all with the Kauravas. And then he said that the outcome of war, we all know how it was and how Lord Krishna guided the Pandavas during various stages of the battle. So what I want to bring out is that technology has always been an enabler, and nations have used it earlier to get over some adversaries, later on as a part of an alliance to get over another pact or opposing forces. And now a new, last 20, 30, 40 years, a new avenue has opened, and that is of creation of a strong defense industrial base. Obviously, the aim is to boost export and generate employment. And all these things, the strong defense industrial base allows any country to wield a huge amount of strategic influence amongst the nations and also in the conduct of international relations.
So, as you have just brought out very rightly, that no nation aspiring to be a great power can afford to, neglect its industrial base. And you have made a mention of a strong defense industrial base. Now, what are the strategic advantages of a strong defense industrial base, sir?
Now, there are many advantages of this, and I'll start off by just taking the example of, say, the top 7, 8 countries having a very strong defense industrial base. These are very strong economies also. You're starting with US, Germany, France, UK, China, Israel. You find that these countries are economically strong. They have a powerful military, reasonable, to their security needs. They offer their citizens a very good standard of living. And apart from that, they have economic surpluses with them, with which, they come out to support other nations. And obviously, whenever you provide financial support to nations, there are always strings attached. So, in short, we will say that all these nations have a very strong, a very high level of comprehensive national power, which is a sum total of your political power, your economic capability, and your military capability. Now, India was also a great power. If you see during the first century AD, uh, specifically during the Maurya and the Gupta empires, politically it spread from Afghanistan right up to Burma. It was the richest nation in the world, and we know about the armies of Chandragupta, and the kind of campaigns they carried out. But then, sadly, all this was lost in the next 10 years, and thereafter the slide started. A strong DIB allows any country to have the following advantages. First of all, it gives you a strong military capability, a long-lasting military capability. If you see the current conflict between Russia and Ukraine, you find that the Russians are continuing to, develop new weapons in the stride. Whereas on the other hand, Ukraine is requesting the complete Western world to provide it with armaments. So this is one very important advantage, strategic advantage, that you can conduct the war as per your likes and dislikes, and you have the wherewithal to extend the duration of operations. The second is strategic assurance. There is a kind of assurance with your own military as well as with your allies that we have got bespoke homegrown weapons which are reliable, which will remain functional. There are no problems of sustainment, and therefore the morale of the soldiers is high. Third, of course, I've told you about the strategic influence. The nations can wield enormous amount of leverages in the field of politics, in the field of economics, military relations, etc. And lastly, one of the very important aspects is the pull through of defense technologies into the civilian field. If you see technologies like, sonography, technologies like cellular communications, internet, and lately drone, these were invented for the military, but now they find wide employment in the civilian field. So if India develops a strong defense industrial base, well, all these advantages will automatically accrue, and India can be propelled into the big league, of these developed nations.
So you discussed on this Ukraine-Russia war, which has almost emerged as a game changer in the world order today. We are seeing alignments and realignments happening, but India is holding its own. And India stands today at the cusp of a major transformation, wherein the country needs to be self-reliant to win the wars of the future. So we need to build our capabilities and capacities to build a strong defense industrial base. to support our armed forces. What, in your view, sir, are the essential elements of a defense industrial base? And what is your assessment of India's defense industrial base today?
See, the Indian defense industrial base, uh, as of now, majorly constitutes the uh, military, which is the biggest consumer. Then you have the DRDO and the academia. You also have the so-called primes or the systems integrator, most of them being in the public sector, and you have the MSMEs. So this is what constitutes the defense industrial base of any nation. Of course, very powerful design houses are also an element of this, which is somehow missing in our context. In industrial terms, if we want to categorize them, we can start off with the industry majors or the so-called primes or systems integrators who go in to integrate complex weapon platforms, be it fighters, be it frigates or air defense ships, or tanks and infantry combat vehicles. Then we have the partial system manufacturers. They are the ones who manufacture systems which can either be used all in a standalone mode, or it can be mounted on a platform. So these are the ones who are manufacturing guns, missiles, radars, and electronic warfare suites and all that. And again, here we find that most of them are again in the public sector, like BDL. You have Bell. You have in the private sector now, of course, we do see Bharat Forge and some other companies coming up who make these, who have made a forays into armaments and radars, etc. The third level is the subsystem manufacturers, a very important category because they possess all the foundational technologies and they manufacture foundational systems like propulsion systems, like survivability systems, like armaments, and we have, sadly, we don't have any of these with us. Whatever we have is in pin pockets here and there, courtesy the TOTs which we have had. Next comes the component and the aggregate manufacturers. This is primarily the MSMEs who prepare components or SRUs and LRUs for supply to all the three categories I have mentioned above. We have also the design houses. They are supposed to be there. These are knowledge-based organizations who possess very unique systems engineering skills. They also have a lot of experience in modeling and simulation and testing of systems, subsystems, and then supplying it to the system integrators and the primes. Apart from this, there are two more categories. One is the anchor institutions or the academia, who are responsible essentially to do the initial handholding, mentoring. They provide research grants and also facilitate the move of an innovation from the lab to the production stage. And finally, of course, you have the military, which, as I mentioned, is the sole consumer. But the military also has its own integral defense industrial base. Very, not many know about it. But this is the industrial base which the military runs on its own. And these are in the forms of the Army Base Workshop, the Base Repair Depot, and the Naval Dockyards. And these establishments have a wealth of tacit and pragmatic knowledge, which they have created over the years. And they can really play a very, very important role in our march towards self-reliance and indigenization. So coming to the last part of your question regarding the assessment of the Indian defense industrial base, as I mentioned, most of it is there in the public sector, and we are more as an assembler of weapon platforms rather than the designers and then manufacturers of that. So most of the weapon platforms we make are either uh, based on transfer of technology from abroad, or some of them which have been integrated here are essentially an assemblage of systems procured from abroad, where foundational subsystems and technologies have been procured from abroad. So as you see, there's a lot of industrial capability gaps. And for a nation the size of India and the aspirations we have, it is very important to assess these capability gaps and fill up these capability gaps in case we really want to go ahead in our this initiative of Atmanirbhar Bharat.
Sir, as you had brought out earlier, and you spoke of the seven major nations which have a very strong military industrial base, defense industrial base. And India has got a lot of relations with them, especially with importing their weapon systems or their transfer of technology. And India also has defense agreements with 53 countries across the globe. So, how can a strong DIB, a good, strong defense industrial base, enhance military technology cooperation between India and other countries?
Well, a strong DIB can take the existing level of cooperation between India and all these countries to a new level. And also, in doing so, it will enable us to shape the direction of international relations. You take the case of this war in Ukraine. If you see, it's been now going to be close to 1 year. And this actually has given us a window of opportunity, if we look at it, because there are a large number of countries in the world which are operating Soviet platforms and Russian made systems. Now, this is the time for us to, since we have the transfer of technology with us, this is time for us to look into the supply chains of these systems and take up large scale indigenization, not only to meet our own operational requirements, but also to become a source of supply for all these countries, including Russia, where they are also facing problems with regard to their supply chain and essentially spare parts and connected equipment. If we do that, then in the next stage, it is these same MSMEs and other players who can then ramp up their capabilities based on this transfer of technology to get into the field of supply of, as I said, foundational systems, not only for our requirement, but also for requirement of other friendly countries. And tomorrow, this cooperation which we are having, say, with Armenia or with Philippines, and there was some talk about Vietnam, etc., where we are trying to provide them some systems, that can be taken to a much larger level, and more countries will be looking forward to India to provide them these kind of subsystems because of the unique competitive advantage we can create for ourselves when we do this kind of job. So apart from this, in case we set up a versatile defense industrial base with strong capabilities, you will find that most of these companies in the so-called developed world will be wanting to come here and going in for joint ventures, for joint production or joint development of future combat systems, be it the next generation fighters or next generation land systems or marine systems and all that. So all in all, if you see, a strong defense industrial base really provides a nation huge opportunities besides the economic benefits, huge opportunities to uh, conduct its international relations. And I can give you only two big examples. Both these countries were in the same state as we were in the 70s, net importers of weapon system. Israel was one, which is totally reliant on Western technology. China carried out local production of technologies which were transferred to it in the 50s and early 60s, and see where they have been today. With they took a decision to go the indigenous way to become self-reliant, and both these countries have taken remarkable strides in this. So, really, a strong defense industrial base can put you at a different level, where then you can accordingly, shape your relationship both in the diplomatic and the military fields.
So, so we are aware India imports a considerable amount of its defense equipment and platforms. In fact, it is the world's largest importer of weapon systems and platforms. And the government of India has been pushing for greater indigenization of military hardware. So, sir, how does India embark on this journey of establishing a strong defense industrial base to turbocharge the Make in India?
See, for achieving anything substantive and big, the first and foremost thing is to look deep and look far, and you work out a strategy as to where we want to be, say 10 to 15 years from now, or maybe 20, 25 years from now. We can call it the short term and the long term, goals. You take the case of China. We know, as a result of very very well planned strategies, they have been able to reach a place which is really enviable, being the second largest economy in the world and a renowned military power. Despite this, if you go by the pronouncements in the recent the 20th Congress of the CCP, they are very clear that by 2027 they will have multi-domain capabilities and they will achieve technology dominance at the regional level. And by 2035, they want to reach technological parity with the US. Now, you can give or take 4-5 years here and there, but imagine if they can achieve that, what will be the repercussions on nations like India? So, what I want to bring out here is that the fact that the government of India has decided that this extraordinary dependence of ours on of the Indian military on imported system has to be stopped, and they have initiated steps for self-reliance and indigenization. These things will not happen on their own. If we allow all these elements of the defense industrial base to freewheel, I have mentioned what are the elements of the DIB ecosystem in India. So someone has to take charge and move them in the required direction. I personally feel that there is a need to evolve a strategic plan, a short-term plan up to 2035, and a long-term plan going up to 2045 or even 50. In the short term, our goal should be very clear. We have to identify industrial capability gaps, which I have mentioned. The absence of system engineering houses, the absence of partial system and subsystem manufacturers, the manufacturers of designers and manufacturers of foundational systems. So we have to plug this gap and say that, okay, by 2025, any land system coming out in the country will be powered by indigenous subsystem. There is no question of importing anything, be it a tank gun, be it a power pack, be it a fire control system. Everything has to be indigenous. At least we should, write it there in black and white. How much we achieve is a different issue. And then a similar thing we should do, that in the long term, all marine systems, all aircraft and related aerospace systems will be powered by indigenous technologies and indigenous subsystems to the maximum extent. Now, if we do this, you will find that it may get delayed or it may be achieved early, But at least we will be self-sufficient in propulsion systems, in power packs, in survivability suits, in armament, and things like that. Today, you take the case of whether you take the LCA or you take the MBT Arjun, we all know that they are powered by foreign technologies, and obviously, when you do that, then a lot depends on the kind of relations you can maintain with these countries, because if you are not able to do that, then certainly you are creating operational vulnerabilities for yourself. So I feel that we have to chalk out a plan, and like the Israelis or the Chinese, we should also look at practicing innovation in innovation, which means, absorbing technologies. I'll give you an example of the missile, the anti-tank guided missile systems. We have taken about 6 or 7 transfer of technologies, and yet it is sad that even today we are trying to import this very basic weapon system from abroad. I mean, by now we should have churned out a large number of versions and models of our own in across the board, whether it was 2.5 generation or 3rd generation. But then I think no harm done. We can still start, and I'm sure with the capabilities which our young engineers and scientists have been displaying and the recognition they've got world over, we will be able to do the corrections which are required. And as I mentioned, that the strategy is very important, and somebody has to take charge to lead this whole pack, to shepherd this pack together. Otherwise, they will continue moving around independently. And the second aspect is that a kind of a atmosphere of collaboration has to set in. Today, we have created an atmosphere of extreme competition, which is not good, which is not good for us in our march towards self-reliance.
So today, Make in India is certainly a major thrust for all of us. General NB, you have been an ex-Director General of Electronics and Mechanical Engineering. You have headed the Army's Defense MRO, and you also had very strong interactions with India's defense industrial base. How can MRO activities accelerate the Make in India initiatives?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think not very many people are aware about the unique capabilities which are present with the military's integral industrial base. As you know, MRO is an activity which is carried out. It's an industrial activity which is undertaken essentially to keep all your weapon platforms in a ready-to-fight condition. So this is I mean, the next sum of what these industrial units are supposed to be doing. And over a period of time, by virtue of exposure to a large number or large array of weapon platforms, whether it is with the Navy or the Air Force or Army, these industrial houses, industrial units have created a large cache of pragmatic and tacit knowledge. And I feel that if this knowledge or know-how is transferred to other industrial entities within the country, and when I talk about Army's integral MRO units, I'm also taking into account the MRO activities being done by the public sector, under the Department of Defense Production. So they also are there. So it is time that this knowledge cache is transferred or is shared with the private industry. And once you do that, given the efficiencies which the private sector can create, you will find that your whole exercise of carrying out these kind of repairs, firstly, the time will be cut short, and secondly, it may turn out to be more cost effective, because today we know the problems which are plaguing us. And so I feel that it is time that this knowledge is shared. And how do we share it? We share it by mandatory outsourcing of, say, 50 to 60% of all MRO activities. There should be this kind of a mandate given to the military that, okay, you will outsource 40-50% of your MRO activities to the private sector. Now, once this is done, obviously, there'll be hand holding, there'll be transfer of know-how. And once this comes to the private sector, as I said, the advantages will be that they will not only cater for our requirements, but also they will look for business abroad. They will stabilize the supply chain, which has gone into a tailspin. And subsequently, I said they will build up on this. They will practice innovation and build up on this knowledge base to create foundational systems and subsystems for future combat systems. So the advantages are manifold, and this is the starting point. The military has to take the lead. Nobody else can do it. And we have this unique example of how the Navy has been doing it, by hand-holding either the DRDO or hand-holding the industry. So it is time we do that. And I feel by outsourcing or a kind of a public-private partnership, if we initiate these things, we can start building the blocks for this dream of self-reliance to come through. And we can, as I mentioned earlier, we can create this competitive advantage because we have the advantage of our young workforce, which is acclaimed worldwide, everywhere. I mean, today even I find units in industrial units in Germany and all praising the engineers who are working there, Indian engineers, despite the fact that they have to learn a foreign language, but they are all praised for their capabilities. So in the end, finally, I will end on the note that given the right ecosystem and an environment of collaboration and hand-holding and facilitation, it is very much possible for the country to achieve self-reliance and establish a strong defense industrial base for the Indian military. Because I feel that, 70 years or 70 plus years is more than enough. And it's time now that the Indian military gets equipped with proudly made in India brands and not imported brands. And all what is needed is an authentic leader at the top who can shepherd all these people together and turbocharge or put this Make in India program into the overdrive.
Thank you very much, sir. That has been most informative, and you've shared so much of your knowledge in this field. As we have seen over the last 3 years, the COVID crisis, the Ukraine-Russia war, it has proved to be a game changer in the world order. And the world is looking at India because India has stood firm against all these crises. India therefore needs to consider its position with respect to its national security and defense cooperation with all friendly nations. We have 2 hostile neighbors on our borders, and we've had a long-lasting dependence on Russia for its defense needs. We are the world's largest importer of weapons. So the entire world, the Western Bloc, Russia, everybody is looking at India and they're wooing India. Also, with this increasing defense industrial base, production base that you spoke of, and the strategy of how to increase it, India will also be looking at the developing world to market its capabilities in the defense sector. So this interaction has given us a lot of pointers on the way ahead, sir. And I'm sure it will be viewed by members of the MRO Digest, and we will share this across the forums to help everybody. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Vijay. And Jai Hind.